Okay, I suggest that we get started. If everyone can take a seat, that would be great.
Albert, eins ist audience science.
Guys, here or?
Here.
Okay.
Okay. Let's sit down. Please come also a little bit closer. Thank you very much for joining this session, which was originally planned to be the opening session of this event. Then we thought, okay, the Vice President of the European Commission certainly will have an extremely busy schedule, especially around the days of the COP30. And then we thought, okay, let's try to do this in the middle. It's an old experimental filmmaker's trick, yeah, to have the opening titles in the middle of the movie. Also, this didn't really work out. Yeah? So it's almost a closing statement now. Although, I have to say, we have a number of really, really important sessions in the course of this afternoon. And yeah, we were eagerly awaiting this session with the Vice President of the European Commission. It's, I mean, we have to put this really into relation now. We are extremely humbled, very, very honored. It's almost a little bit embarrassing because it's not normal that the Horizon Europe research project, I mean, there are hundreds and thousands of them. Imagine if they all would insist on. No. So we are really, really in a very, very privileged situation. Not only that we have this, that we have received this statement from Teresa Ribera. She's unfortunately not able to join us live and read it out live, but she recorded it this morning and we will play it. And then I have the great pleasure to discuss this input and this statement from the Vice President together with two colleagues. One is Annela Anger-Kravi, who actually was the one who told me first about Teresa Ribera. This was long before, I mean, I ever went to Genalgocil and met Miguel and Joe and so on and so forth. Yeah. But we were sitting in a bar in. Well, we met in a very, very picturesque bar, Annela, you were just organizing the delegation, or you were leading the delegation of the European Union in the negotiations with the United Nations about the measures to limit the impact of the climate crisis. Do you want to introduce a little bit? Because you pointed me to Teresa Ribera and you said this is the most important politician in Europe at the moment because she really cares about the climate crisis and is not just rhetorical.
Yeah, good. What's now morning or afternoon already? Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, indeed, I wasn't leading the EU delegation, but I was leading some of the negotiating streams at that point when we met as a lead negotiator for a couple of issues. But yeah, and I pointed out Teresa to you, and she was also part of the negotiating team, more like firstly contributing, then as a minister. But I think most importantly, we could keep in mind that she's a former researcher, so researching sustainable development, the environment, and European policies. And she has also publications, you can find them online. And before she became a minister, she was executive director of IDRI. IDRI is the Institute for Sustainable Development and International Relations in Paris. So leading a research organization. So research on climate change and on environmental issues is very close to her heart. So I can stop here.
And the person whom we owe this incredible privilege is Miguel Ángel Herrera Guterres, the mayor or alcalde of Genalgocil, a small town with 450 inhabitants at the moment, 2 hours from here in the mountains of Andalusia, in the Valle de Genal. So can you tell us how did you make this happen, or why are we enjoying this incredible privilege now?
Thank you very much, Florian. Thank you very much to all of you. This is a beautiful story, and I think it's what Pacesetters is about. It's about generosity, it's about kindness, it's about relationships, and it's also about collaboration. And I have the fortune of being the mayor of a small village, as you said, Genalgocil, which for someone who comes from a farmer's background and has to go away to come back to start businesses. And becoming the mayor was one of the most important things that I did in my life. And I must say, it wasn't in my plans of life to be involved in politics. But through those years, politics has given me quite a few beautiful gifts. One of them was to get in touch with my family, with Joe, that came back after his grandmother left in the middle of a civil war. So I had the chance to meet him and to start this mad idea of the International Laboratory of Rural Innovation in Genalgocil. And through that, and Genalgocil and the people who've been part of the team, like Arturo, Lluvia, Vere, and being mad, obviously, we started to create these relationships. One of them was with Teresa Rivera, when before she was even the minister, but obviously while she's been the minister of ecological transition and demographic challenges, we did several programs with her. And she could see how a small rural community was leading rural innovation in Spain. And with something very extremely difficult like art and culture. How can you be a point of reference with art and culture? And that's a beautiful thing. I met Teresa, also had this great pleasure of you and Mari came into our lives in Genalgocil to create this mad idea and to also do justice what rural means. So to those people, to this beautiful story, I want to say thank you very much to all your kindness, generosity, because without all that, and Teresa, this video wouldn't happen. And as Florian said, there are hundreds of thousands of Horizon Europe's programs in the Commission, and she said to me yesterday, they're going to kill me. But it comes down to trust. She knows exactly the power of Pacesetters. She knows the power of where Genalgocil is. And we know we need to change lives. And we know one of the greatest challenges is to change rural. We cannot forget, people who live in cities, we cannot forget to have a sustainable life, we need to have a sustainable rural. And it's got to be human being choice whether I want to live in a rural area or in a city. And nowadays, I must say, it doesn't happen. So with this big introduction, I want to, for me, it's a way of saying thank you to all of you. And it's a great pleasure to be the mayor of a small community helping. And this video is thanks to that generosity and that kindness.
Yeah. Great. Thank you very much, Anela and Miguel, for this more informal, unofficial introductions, more like the making of. So I will just do the official part or the official introduction now as we have received it. So Teresa Ribera is the Executive Vice President of the European Commission for a Clean, Just and Competitive Transition. Her task is to ensure that Europe stays on track for its goals set out in the European Green Deal, while driving the decarbonization and industrialization of our economy. So we gave this session the title Competence and Competitiveness, because these two terms are inseparably linked and connected. It's not only on an etymological level, but also on a very practical and very political level. So let's start with the video and the statement of Teresa Ribera, and afterwards we will have enough time to discuss the implications and the main points that she is raising.
Hello, everybody. It is a pleasure to join you, even from far away, for this gathering. This summit invites us to do something rare in today's world: to pause, to experiment and imagine together, to reflect how culture and creativity can drive the green transition and European competitiveness. No better place to do this than in Genalguacil. This is a village home to fewer than 500 inhabitants, but it has for over 30 years developed a model of territorial development grounded in art, culture, and civic participation. Today, it is one of the real-world laboratories of the Pacesetters project, linking rural innovation, green transition, and creativity. It reminds us that Europe's future is also being shaped in its village. Europe's villages and towns could become the backbone of the green transition. They understand the challenges and sharing the consequence of climate change with their citizens. They have the capacity to involve and to ensure ownership. Many of these villages are already leading the territorial planning that responds to the environmental, climate, and demographic challenges. Europe is navigating profound transformations: climate change, biodiversity loss, digitalization. Demographic shifts are reshaping how we live, how we work, how we relate to one another. The urgency of these challenges is undeniable, but the real question is, how do we transform urgency into meaningful action? Across our continent, many feel fatigue. Many feel exhausted by endless crises and the sense that creativity and confidence are being depleted. Yet, this is precisely where Europe's strength lies: in our ability to connect with others and to be inspired, to create, to facilitate, to ensure that through innovation and creativity, in our capacity to let art, culture, and values to guide how we act. Our social, cultural, and environmental standards are not obstacles to competitiveness. On the contrary, they are its foundation. They are what make Europe attractive, trustworthy, resilient. Pacesetters revives the original meaning of competitiveness, competere, to strive together. Competitiveness in this sense is not about winning at the expense of others, but about cultivating the collective intelligence that enables us to thrive. Europe's creative and cultural sectors are central in this transformation. They contribute as much to our economy as many industrial sectors. Even more importantly, they bring meaning, empathy, connection. They create value, economic, but most importantly, human value, quality of life value, with limited consumption of natural resources or other environmental costs. At a time when automation and artificial intelligence risk reducing creativity to algorithms, we must defend and empower artistic intelligence. It is human capacity that keeps our democracies vibrant and our transitions just. The Pacesetters Summit embodies this vision. The message is very clear. Creativity is not a side effect of competitiveness. It is its source. Through the vision of local leadership and the engagement of citizens, you have sent a powerful message. Small municipalities can lead social and ecological innovation from the ground up. This perspective is essential when 83% of the Europeans' territory is rural, and roughly one-third of our citizens live there. A fair and sustainable transition must ensure that these territories are not left behind, but become protagonists of Europe's ecological and competitive transformation. So let us reclaim competitiveness as collaboration. Let us make Europe's diversity, linguistic, cultural, and territorial, our most powerful asset. That's our ambition. A few days ago, we adopted the strategy to deal with culture, to reinforce culture, something that is so important, but also is part of our soul as Europeans. At a moment when the future feels uncertain, we need the courage to imagine boldly, work together, and turn ideas into action. So, thank you so much for setting the pace for Europe and for the world.
So, Annela, what do you think? What spontaneously? No, what would be your first impression, your immediate response to this statement?
I think it's a very nice statement. I really enjoyed the way she was speaking, but that's not the main thing. It was just really, really powerful, I felt. But for me, the first impression is hope. She says that it's difficult, times are difficult, but there's hope. And if we move all together, we can achieve the goals we so much want to have. Those we're desiring, that means ecological transition, as I said, climate neutrality, and at the same time keep the European economy competitive. And that the artistic and creative communities have a big role to play. And this is what I think Pacesetters is about, what we keep saying. And when it comes to climate transition, there are three ways. Artistic and cultural communities, or artistic research, or practice-based research. I think there are many terms around here. Can contribute. One is just looking at own emissions, own footprint. Also resource consumption. The second one is true creativity, true design, it can be physical design, but also can be more like conceptualization or innovation in thinking. Can influence other industries, what they produce, how they produce. Very simple example could be, for example, car design. So make it more fuel efficient using design, making it look beautiful, but at the same time, so that the shape consumes less fuel. Just an example, but there are many, many others, and people in the room know about that. And the third and most powerful way is to influence people's behavior and the way people think about transition. And that is where arts also come in. So helping to envision the future together, future where there's no climate change impacts. We have transformed the entire economic system and moved to something that is new, completely new. And what does it look like? I don't know. If someone knows here, I would like to hear. But we're really missing this vision. And probably Miguel can talk more about the rural areas. But that vision, I think, would be really helpful. People living in the countryside. We have some images, but this overarching image where we're heading to would be great to come up with together.
So Miguel, Genal Gosil is prominently featured in the statement. What do you make out of this now?
Well, it's very emotional because it's not just Genal Gosil, it's hope, as you said. It's how, for me, the new competitiveness is collaboration and generosity. And I think we should build everything, every project, even our day-to-day lives, into those two basic pillars. And on the other hand, it's also how we need to collaborate urban and rural areas to build a better future. And it cannot be a fight between one or the other. We need to live together. We need to try to find common solutions, global solutions to global problems. I can see, when I listen to Teresa, how it's a brave way to also try to get part of the knowledge and the heritage from rural that is being forgotten. And it's a huge opportunity to get that knowledge, and also to put also at the same level academia and farmers, because they have so much knowledge, local knowledge, specified into one thing. It's like having a couple of PhDs. And sometimes, and I can say, sometimes we don't take it into account. And those relationships that we build through Pacesetters family, I think it can be exported elsewhere, And for me, it's very, very optimistic, very positive that we can also take elsewhere the hope also that rural areas can have a present and the future. And also for young people like me, when we had to leave our villages when we were young, I think everyone, when they leave their home, the first thing in their mind is to come back. And I hope more people from rural can go back to their own villages. Thank you very much.
No, thanks a lot. I think it really means a lot for us. I mean, not only that, and I think, this is maybe the first. This is really something that I have not experienced in these situations. Okay, we had rectors and presidents and high officials from the administration at our conferences and events, and famous artists and very renowned. But the fact that a politician who is operating on such a high level really responds to the questions that we raised in the invitation to this event, and we still have this online, and some of you got it by email, and most of you were coming and paying all the costs for travel and accommodation yourself, because we didn't have the budget to invite you and cover all these costs. Yeah? So there is such a high level of commitment, and to see that this is reflected, that this is understood, and that there is a political agency that is also adequately represented on the top level of the European Union, that they're responding to this issue. This is really, really a substantial experience. Yeah? That it's very emotional, but it's also, I think, intellectually challenging. What she was saying, not only in the sense that this is just mirroring what we were doing and kind of patting our shoulders. No, it really connects these two main themes of the climate transition and the new topic of competitiveness that many of us in the first place have understood as, okay, this is now overwriting all the climate agenda and all the green transition rhetoric of the Commission, and it's just replacing it with purely economic with purely economic goals and metrics. Yeah, but I think we have a really, really good opportunity that this is not happening, that this is not, I mean, what Teresa called in a different context, a race to the bottom, yeah, where competitiveness just means eliminating, disabling all standards that are characterizing policymaking in the European Union in order to be competitive with those who don't, with countries who don't have implemented these standards. No, on the contrary. I mean, the standards and the European values are the source of a future competitiveness. And art and culture play a crucial role as the competitive edge of Europe because of its diversity. I think these are, in these times, yeah, these are very, very strong and important messages, and they should really encourage us and give us the energy and the strength to turn this into practice and into everyday life experiences, because this is a really, really big challenge. Are there, I mean, we should, we have not planned a 45 minutes talk show now. Are there any questions or comments? We will have multiple opportunities now in the remaining program of this day. I mean, we have sessions on audience science, for example, on artistic intelligence. Teresa was mentioning several times the term artistic intelligence. I mean, if somebody would have told me this 5 years ago, I mean, I would have said, okay, I mean, dream on, no? I mean, it really gives us now so many opportunities to refer to this and to develop this further in the many different directions that are possible. But if there are there any comments or statements or responses? Jakob?
No, thank you very much. Just very quickly, if you could just elaborate a little bit, you did it, Miguel, on the notion or the idea of competitiveness and how we could relate to that, thinking ahead, because I think this is a key a key concept. Are we right?
Maybe I can pass on this question to the economist here on stage. Maybe it would be interesting to start from there, no?
Yeah, it's not an easy question. That's the reason why I got it, I think. But before I go to that competitiveness issue, that angle, then you said there's lots of opportunities here for arts and creatives. But I think it's also responsibility that shepherds and the industry, and that responsibility should be taken seriously. And that also comes to rural areas, that's responsibility. She was, I think, referring to that we all have the responsibility together. But in terms of competitiveness, I'm sure all of you know the story that Europe has recently been losing its competitiveness compared to other big economies, such as China or the US, and that's the worry. And plus, there's a war, ongoing war that Europe also supports, the one who's been attacked, so supporting Ukraine. The economists are still recovering from COVID, and many of us have forgotten that already, that there was such a thing. And it's all, you can see cost of living increasing, that also, and then at the same time we want to completely restructure the economies we have in order to achieve the green transition, the European Green Deal goals. Hence, and that means further investments, higher prices that many of us see, and that means that there's further loss of competitiveness compared to countries who don't do it. And when it now then, in Teresa's speech saying that arts and cultures can contribute to competitiveness, have their role to play, and rural areas have their role to play, I think that comes back to this what Pacesetters are trying to do, partly sort of looking at small enterprises, small artistic enterprises, generating new ideas, and having this vast variety of different and ventures, or we have case studies in Pacesetters, and that would help create new innovation, and that would add to competitiveness. But I think that's the entire idea that comes true, just encouraging being creative, finding new things, creating new things, rediscovering old ones, if we talk about knitting and fermentation. And that would make European economy more competitive, but that's not an easy journey. So, and she doesn't promise easy journeys either.
Well, I can say the importance of the creative sectors is how Generación has been built. It's a village museum, and art and culture has been actually the engine for developing the community. If we go back 50 years, we lost nearly 70% of the population, and how art and culture has been the key thing how we can stay there. And it's been built, and that's why I appreciate so much the effort Teresa's doing, because it's been built on the know, in a way of you can have a contemporary art museum, you can have art residences. So I think we have to reveal the system, and the green transition also goes to ask people how do they want to live. Green transition is not imposing how green is without asking people, what green is. Because otherwise it becomes, it can be green in one area, can be brown in another area. And I was very lucky because last week I was in Brussels with another European project which we've been invited. It is called Fire Race, and it's how to fight fires across the world, not just in Europe. And how Generación gets into the equation is because we think and we know the creative sectors have a lot to offer, especially on all the bioeconomy models. And why? To have a resilient forest, we need to create new models. And that's why with artists, designers, etc., we can create products on rural areas. Not massive factories or fab labs, but we can do a smaller scale companies which it can hold, let's say, 50, 60 families on the territory, taking care and making sure it doesn't get burnt again, because it actually follows a pattern. And those fires, although they say, the climate is making the fires worse, yes, it is, but it's also because the forest has been abandoned. And now, the creative sectors, we have to also give answers to the rural, to the forest, etc., etc.
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for this session, and thank you to the Vice President of the European Commission that she has been giving her a speech to the Pacesetters project and mentioning it. I mean, I can only stress again, that is a great, great success for the Pacesetters project, and thank you, Miguel and Florian, for bringing this into life. I want to come back to what you said, Miguel, that really touched me emotionally very much. I think it is about the rural areas. They are playing such an important role when it comes to elections. They are feeling left behind. And you said, coming back, I'm also from a village, and I'm going back to my village. You came from the village, you went back. And we have to fight against this brain drain. And once we went out into the world, and when we're going back to our villages, to our rural areas, it is important that we are inspiring the people there so that they don't feel left behind. And what you said, climate transition will only be possible if we do it also in the rural areas, not only in the cities. Of course, they are the ones who are always ahead, but we really have to give these people living in the rural areas back their pride, that they can also provide solutions, what you just said with the fire or with the organic farming, or the models how we take care of each other, the neighbors take care that they are not dying when we have a heat wave, as this happened. I just learned this morning. In big cities, the old people are staying in their apartments with 40 degrees and they are dying because nobody takes care of them. And this is the beauty and the advantage we have still in the rural areas, but this is also about to be changed. And here I really would like to stress the importance of the artificial intelligence, that this data and our experiences from the rural areas will be implemented in the different AI models, language models, and chatbots, and all these kind of new tools.
Thank you very much. I would like to refer to this aspect of competitiveness, and my thought is as simple as maybe a little bit naive, but I was thinking about this new framework program where we were sort of wondering, a little bit complaining, why under this competitiveness area there was no culture and creative sectors and industries, and it was discussed that it might be or will be covered under this digital leadership. You remember? And I was thinking, why don't we take our real strength in Europe, which is culture and creativity, which is our competitive advantage, and just call it the digital and creative leadership, or digital and cultural creative leadership, because this makes it very special, this makes it individual, this makes it European. This wouldn't harm, it would enhance also the potential to incorporate programs underneath it. And I don't know, can we not lobby for this? It would be so simple, actually.
No, I think we have we are now in a situation that many of the arguments that we have been making from a rather marginal position over the last months and years, no, we can assign them a different kind of weight, no, but it does not mean that it's automatically happening, not just because the Vice President of the European Commission is referring to it. No? So I mean, we also have to be careful not to overestimate it. But it's more, I think it was really very, very important what Annela said, and also Miguel. It gives, I mean, it makes us aware of a quite urgent sense of responsibility to take care of these topics, and it encourages us that we are on the right track. There is a possibility, it's not a given, there is a possibility that we develop a kind of, I called it recently, a notion of, or an understanding of creative competitiveness, rather than the destructive competitiveness that she was also referring to, the kind of competitiveness that kills all other competitors, no, or eliminates competition ultimately, no. And I think the example of AI, which is one of the main reasons why Europe's competitiveness was diminishing so rapidly over the last 10 years. Yeah. In the context of AI, we have a huge potential to show that in the moment when you do not only see artists and their audiences, culture and creativity as objects of a technology or technological processes, but which is kind of complete nonsense. I mean, every generative AI model is trained with the work of artists and creatives. Yeah. So if we reclaim this kind of agency, or co-agency, as we call it sometimes, collective agency, then I think we have a very interesting value proposition that can become highly competitive. And not only on a global scale when it comes to GDP and enormous amounts of money. I think most importantly on a very local scale. We discussed, or Michael introduced recently this concept of polylocality, which becomes increasingly important these days. It is a kind of decentralized form of relating to each other. And I think here, rural and remote areas, small towns like Genalgocil, but I think also medium-sized towns, yeah, can play a very, very important role. So far, when we look at the policies of or the predominant policies, no, it's about 100 climate neutral cities. These are fairly big cities, no? I mean, there's a focus on the city, of course, because it's the main producer of greenhouse gases, yeah, and also the industrial periphery of the cities. Yeah. But the battlefield of the climate transition are the rural and remote areas. This is where it will be decided whether this transition will be successful or not. And I think everything that we learn in this process, and these are tough processes, no? It's not an easy, smooth transition, no? So where we fade from one state into the other without even noticing, and everything is just and fine, and nobody is left behind. No, it will be very, very harsh. It will be tough processes. But I think we have to maintain our as a maximum of integrity in this context. Yeah. I mean, political integrity, ethical integrity, but also epistemic sovereignty, that we claim concepts, that we create new concepts, or take over existing concepts that nobody wants to have anymore and fill them with new meaning, as, for example, we did with the concept of artistic intelligence. So I see there really a tremendous potential, a tremendous responsibility, and a lot of support.
Yeah, we are talking about competitiveness and rural areas, and I have a question for us all, but specifically for Miguel and the rest of the speakers, about the impact of the gentrification that we are having coming to small spaces and completely transformed with our artists and our culture from outside, and mostly like foreigners like coming to. I mean, I have to say I'm guilty of that, because I went 25 years ago to Tarifa, and I was from abroad. From out of the town, and I impact the town, and I see how Tarifa has changed in the past years, and I'm just, maybe if you have some thoughts about how we are going to deal with this impact that we are going to have in these rural areas that we are having already.
Yeah, this is the other side, or the dark side of competitiveness, no? Yes. I think the rural gentrification challenge is very, very interesting in this context. Do you want to respond directly? Or?
Well, if we think that a place like Hanawathil 50 years ago were 1,500, and now we don't get up to 500, I mean, there is space for us to live there. And but gentrification is what's happening in Costa del Sol. Tarifa is next to nothing. I mean, we need to put in context, we need to put in context what is gentrification, because for us, well, especially us, to get to Hanawathil, you need to make an effort. So the biggest filter we have is the road. You need to take quite a few kilometers through a windy road. So we are prepared natural filters for it. And on the other hand, it's about I want to say politically, about sharing. And when they decide the budget from the European Commission to the governments, they don't think about like Tarifa or Hanawathil. They think, what's the closest, biggest city to put the money there? It would go to Algeciras, Cádiz. It won't go to the people in Tarifa to solve their problems from people from Tarifa. They won't ask people from Tarifa what type of future you want, what model of innovation you want, because we don't have a voice. Tarifa doesn't have a voice, Hanawathil doesn't have a voice. So we need to have a voice. And I think Pacesetters is giving voice, other voices, not the same ones. And also when they talk about green transition for the future, 95% is through the eyes of people who live in cities, which is not green. Green, ask my father how to prune the trees without getting a permission, which takes years. It's asking the farmers how Hanawathil got burned in 2021 because they didn't allow us to have sheep or goats there. That's the real green transition. And don't try to put a green garden in front of this building to justify the same architect doing the same building to get the same money. That's what a Green Deal is. It's not. Go back to rural, ask people who live in rural how we want us to live, and stop making laws totally against us. And don't talk about human beings and nature if they are two different items separate. No, we are the same, nature and human beings. And don't talk about biodiversity when you don't talk about human beings in nature. Then you talk about animals and trees. Sorry, we live together. We're part of each other. But some people are trying to create this war. And I'm going to tell you what is part of the green transition is few companies have the power. Selling you the green transition, creating a need for people who can afford it. In the meantime, we forget about their knowledge to have sovereignty, local sovereignty, to be able to be alive in rural because they don't want us to have a garden. And farmers are not people who have 20 tractors. Farmers are people who want to live in a small farm and they want to have their own food. That's a farmer. I get really agitated with this because I come from a farmer.
Yeah. Can I? Okay. Sorry. Yeah, just to reflect, there seems to be a bit of competition going on here. I'm also from a village. Grew up there, and and I still work with farmers, foresters, and I understand the. I think I understand at least the problems, what they're going through. And rural communities are often those ones who are hit by climate change, the climate change impacts. So the fires here, in other areas of the world, there are either storms or floods. But they also the ones that are most hit by the transition itself, those policies. Those requirements that have put on farmers and foresters and fishermen. And this, but something that Miguel said was we need to ask people what do they think is green and how do they want to transform their livelihoods. they're part of, and I totally agree that humans are part of nature, and separating this is very, very artificial. And that's asking and doing together is often that's missing from green policies as well. And not just asking. Often you get, oh, we have stakeholder engagements, like everyone get together, present something, ask questions, and that's it. Nothing else happens. Listening is also important. To listen. And listen, really listen, not just, oh, yeah, you said something. And then that helps to move forward. And that's just transition, what also Teresa is in charge of. And that is very, very important. And in the rush on doing, and also the big energy companies transforming, that's kind of lost somewhere. And this is what we see now. And I just completed a study saying that who are hit most, and there were those living in the countryside by policies, and add climate change to that. So it's a double burden. But on the other hand, there's so much potential.
Yeah, hi, just a quick comment on this. Maybe it's a bit of a devil's advocate position. I like this idea of reframing the term competition, but not if we're doing ourselves a favor in the long term, as short term, that's going to bite us back in the long term. So if we say competition is good because it means something else, like entirely, it means we don't have to go out there and compete, we can just be in a kind of fuzzy, safe space, that I think maybe the part of this conversation should be to say the problem is not competition, the problem is the definition of winning. Kids love to compete, and the question is, how do we treat everyone when the race is over? The question is not, do we get into the race? People love to compete. And the other thing I would say, two more things. One, on the geopolitical situation, it's obvious that the European competition with China and the US is changing the rules of the game. Part of this change is that these two competitors do no longer speak the language of competition. You have, for instance, Peter Thiel, who has said competition is for losers. The only thing that works in capitalism are monopolies, which is why we have the platform economy we have, because the only good business models in the platform economy are extractivist monopolies. This guy is touring the European startup circuit with this message. All right? He says, if you believe in competition, open another fast food restaurant. All right? Good luck on building a sustainable business model. You want capitalism? Forget competition. So that's the US. On the Chinese side, it's a more complex story, but essentially nobody's believing in competition. Everybody's believing in subsidizing a project until you get what you want. So I think part of reclaiming the language of competition is to say Europe is the only region in the world that's actually walking the talk. In terms of fair markets, transparent rules for competition. And the other reason why I think we should do that is connected to the term agora. We talked about this yesterday because it's a new framing narrative for everything we do in the cultural and creative sector. And the first thing people said, it's not a good term because it means market. But if we learned one thing, I think, from Mariana Mazzucato and her colleagues, is that at the heart of the public value conversation is the idea that there are all kinds of markets. So I think we're not doing ourselves a favor if we're saying market means capitalism. Market can mean we set the rules, the frameworks, the rules of the game for the co-creation of public value. And so there is a risk, I think, involved in giving up these terms rather than reframing and strategically reappropriating them.
I love that, by the way. For some of us that are in the middle of defending labor rights and a rights approach, I do think the role of Europe is fundamental. Where in the US, the dismantling of rights, is the way to compete. And in China, although I'm not anti-Chinese in any way, labor rights are also their lack of is their competitiveness. So it is Europe, actually, that can develop an economy of rights. But we are in a fight for the democracy of Europe as well. And so part of the discussion of the winning, of how we all have to live a dignified life, through rules that defend labor rights and gender rights and all sorts of rights, and the rights of the biodiversity itself. I do think that Europe is the hope, but we got to win the political fight as well. So to me, I think the politics, of what you're discussing is fundamental to also a democratic discussion, right? Because democracy has to be won economically as well. Why I talk about trade unions is, for me, is the economic democratic mechanism to redistribute wealth, to redistribute rights, if you will. But I do think that I wanted to ask about the politics, Miguel. Like, how do you see this type of model of, I would argue, just transition has the word justice in it, but it is also the only way we can continue to build a healthy democratic alternative to right-wing fascism, I would say. So I do want to bring the discussion of politics, because to me, what are the vectors where we're going to organize big chunks of this population to believe in the bet that we are discussing here and not the alternative, And so I think that is why this is so important, why that message is so important, because it is a different types of politics. But I also think, just to put a little bit more pressure on Europeans, Europe can still be a model of rights, in a dismantling of not only rights, but really international institutions and things that we have counted on, that are under attack massively. So yes, I just wanted to throw the issue of democracy and politics. Gracias, Miguel.
Thank you very much for the very appropriate question nowadays. And coming from a farmer's family, I'm going to give you a very illustrative way of thinking. Democracy is like a plant. Then you need to take care of it, and you cannot take it for granted. And I think we've taken it too long, too far for granted, and we forgot that plant existed. But now is the time. And I think we're doing well here, and I can say also an example is the Pacesetters family. Us, when we've been getting together, we cook together. It's the humans. We need to take, when we do a policy, it's always thinking and putting in the middle human beings. And we have experienced that because it's not a project. It's about sharing, cooking together, life, enjoying. And through policy, we need to make sure human beings can collaborate with each other. We need to make a strength the laws. And I was talking to Teresa very seriously, because 85% of territory, rural, is totally unprotected. Totally unprotected. Huge pressure. And I'm going to say one thing. I don't trust any politician. And I'm a politician. I trust laws. I trust laws. I need a law which protects me. I need a law which tells you the wealth has to be distributed this way. Because then another person comes, especially now with right wing, comes and they can destroy all we have created through the last few decades. We can lose it, like, where it's doing it, they're doing it here with social services, healthcare. They are experts on destroying and privatizing what human beings have created, and we cannot afford it. So I'll go back to what I said at the beginning. We need to take care of that little plant we planted one time, and we cannot take it for granted.
Great. I think we are running already a little bit over time. We have one more session. I think it is also here, if I remember correctly, on audience science. And this, I think, relates and connects in a very interesting way to what we were discussing in this slot. So we would like to push this discussion forward and push it towards the challenge how to involve audiences, visitors, or participants of the creative and cultural and artistic projects, how to involve them into the processes of knowledge production and research, not as objects, as it is usually happening in any kind of survey or interview, or however participatory you design your research. We want to discuss a radically different approach, which we call audience science, where the audiences become co-researchers in the projects, and I think it would have many implications, especially in rural and remote areas. We touched these topics before. So let's make a short break, 10 minutes or so, and then continue here with the audience science, and then we have our last lunch. No, gin tonic. Yeah. No, there will be a lunch. There will also be lunch in Renalgosil, of course. A proper Spanish lunch. But 2 o'clock is lunchtime here, and we meet in 10 minutes again for the next session on audience science. Thank you very much.